When I was a kid, there was this magical place called Blockbuster. It was like Netflix, only you had to drive there and find the movies and shows on the racks, and after a couple days you had to give them back. It was a special time. My family and I would go there all the time. The grown-ups would rent the dramas, the teenagers would rent their horror movies, and us kids would search for the coolest looking cartoons we could find. And one day, one of my sisters brought the most girly video cassette to me. I was skeptical at first. It was so unlike the usual things we would get. This wasn't Dragon Ball Z, this wasn't SpongeBob, this wasn't even X-Men. But I trusted her judgment. We shared similar tastes in shows, and I was a simple kid. If there was fighting and explosions and decent jokes, I would like it, and she promised this VHS had all of that and more. So when we got home, I popped it in the VCR, we fast-forwarded past the previews and started watching it. And about 15 minutes in, that's when I knew. We found something spectacular. That video cassette was Sailor Moon R the movie. And even though I didn't know exactly what was going on, I had fallen for the show. And I had fallen hard. Sailor Moon is the biggest shoujo anime of all time, and there is a good reason for that. To give you a scope of its influence, Powerpuff Girls, Madoka Magica, Kill la Kill, Cardcaptor Sakura, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Steven Universe, Miraculous Ladybug, My Little Pony, Star vs. the Forces of Evil are just a few shows that would not exist without Sailor Moon. Period. It is known around the globe as one of the greatest classic anime of all time. A must-watch for anyone that even remotely enjoys anime in general. There are homages and parodies and deconstructions of it everywhere, and for very good reason. In fact, one time, I mistakenly started singing the theme song aloud in a random place, and dozens of people joined in. There is an actual hybrid flower named after Sailor Moon called Happy Valley Sailor Moon. A band from Germany named themselves the Super Moonies, and their entire aesthetic and theme is directly lifted from the show. Is it sinking in that this show is incredible yet? If not, that works out for me because I want to praise each and every aspect of it. Okay, I can't say that this show has the greatest character writing on Earth. That would be completely inaccurate and hyperbolic. But I will say that every major character is incredibly well characterized. They feel like actual people, living and breathing individuals that you get the joy of watching grow and interact with the world. And that is so much more than most shows can say. Who has characters that only exist as devices to move the plot forward or cardboard cutouts to place in the background. Specifically, our main characters are actual teenage girls. Not the Mary Sue, always perfect, never struggles teenage girls being written nowadays, and not the only here to be an object for other characters to obtain teenage girls being placed into stories. They actually do things that real teenage girls do. They shop, they try to go on diets and end up falling off the bandwagon. They get excited about good food, they have embarrassing crushes on boys, they bicker, they complain about school, they have sleepovers, they crack up laughing, they do fun things when they should be working, they procrastinate, they cry, they joke, this might not seem like much, but these things really give depth to the characters and flesh out their relationships, which is essential to the entire drama of the story. The Sailor Senshi, Ami, Minako, Mako, and Rei, and the always entertaining Usagi really pulls in new viewers to the show with their group dynamic and their strong personalities. Usagi is my personal favorite, simply because she is the most non-main character main character I've ever seen in any show. Well, a non-main character main character that isn't incredibly annoying. Sure, she cries a lot, but it's often hilarious rather than annoying, and she's pretty stupid, but that's funny too, and it's a genuine character flaw that she struggles with and requires her friends to compensate for. The main friend that does this is Ami, Sailor Mercury, who is so sweet, so nice, and so smart, but sometimes so awkward it hurts. She, just like all the other characters, has a beautiful arc and amazing moments throughout the series that solidifies her importance to the group and character writing in general. She's the smartest character, but she's not the strongest, which is where Mako comes in. Sailor Jupiter is a lovely spin on a tomboy character, in that she is a tomboy, but all she wants is to be seen as a girly girl by the various cute guys she meets. She cooks like nobody's business, and she cleans, and she's aggressively looking for love every chance she gets. Mako's great and sweet, but Ray comes in with the spice. Sailor Mars, another of my absolute favorites, is one of the coolest characters in the series. She's stern, she's mature, yet she slips into childish bickering and competing with the unabashedly childish Usagi. Ray is easily embarrassed and, pardon the pun, fiery, and despite people thinking she's too mean, I loved her snarky, salty butt the entire time because she has moments of comeuppance and her meanness is just a mask for her true devotion and love for her friends. Her role in the group of being the mean one is perfectly balanced with everyone else's, including one of the most balanced characters of the main group, Minako. Sailor Venus is fantastic in that she's just as silly as Usagi, but driven and ambitious and outgoing. Minako isn't afraid of much, starved for love while also claiming to be the guardian of it. She's very goofy, yet dependable and brave. God, she's my favorite too. I think all of the girls are my favorite. I mean, they all have so many moments throughout the series that build them up so well into phenomenal characters that stick with you for the rest of your life. But what would good protagonists be without a competent and compelling list of villains, which this show has in spades? There is at least one major villain that will resonate with you, seeing as there are so many and the variety between them is vast. There are characters that are sympathetic, deliciously theatrical, quirky and strange, redeemable, evil to the core, romantically involved, desiring to be romantically involved, and the list goes on and on and on. Seriously, these villains are so great, or at least very memorable, and they all have interesting powers and plans, and it's just, it's great. Unlike the manga and the newly released Crystal, the original anime gives ample time for you to get to know each major villain. One of my all-time favorites being the mature, the stunning, and the completely entertaining Nephrite from Season 1. Nephrite's story, without spoiling anything, is one of the most poignant, heartfelt stories of all time. It never fails to impress me, despite me watching it like 20 times. It's that good, and I'm definitely going to cover it in immense detail in some future videos. But really, a great majority of the villains are iconic and mesmerizing, and their interactions with the Sailor Senshi are always either tense and dramatic, or hilarious and entertaining. There are really only a few that I didn't enjoy too much, but even then, I like them a lot more than, say, some Dragon Ball Z villains that nobody can really describe beyond their looks because their personality and motivations and any nuance is non-existent. Even the monsters of the week are creative and funny and entertaining. Again, there's at least one for everybody to enjoy. Now, the Monster of the Week formula can seem repetitive at first, but there's something you should know before you watch. The Monsters of the Week are direct extensions of the reoccurring main villains that you will get to know immensely well. In fact, you won't even notice the repetitive nature of the Monster of the Week episodes after you fall in love with the main characters and the antagonists. Heck, I even use the Monsters of the Week for inspiration for my own characters and stories. So really, once you get hooked by everything else in the show, you won't mind them at all. But basically, all the characters are going to grow on you really fast, and some of them are going to make you fall in love so hard you won't be able to think straight. Some fan favorites that I haven't gotten to yet is Esmeralda, Haruka,
まもなく恐ろしいことが起きる。それを救うためにはタリスマンは必要なんだ。誰だって犠牲者を出したくない。だがもしそれで全世界が救われるならば、お前だったらどうする？
Michiru,
闇雲に走り回っても解決できる問題じゃないって分かってるくせに。
Mamoru,
セーラームーンは死にそうなのよ。
セーラー、いやウサコ、俺が着くまで生きていてくれ。死ぬんじゃないぞ、ウサコ。
Naru,
嘘みたい、止まった。三条医様をいじめないで。その人を許すわけにはいかないわ。そこをどきなさい。嫌よ、殺されたってどかないわ。
この子は俺のことを。
なぜそうまでしてその人をかばうの？好きだから、大好きだから。たとえ命と引き換えにしてもこの人は守るわ。
and Helenia.
会うことなかれ、夢見る子供の夢の夢、夢夢疑うことなかれ、夢見る子供の夢の夢、夢夢疑うことなかれ、夢見る子供の夢の夢。
Sailor Moon's plot, as described by IMDb, is the magical action adventures of a teenage girl who learns of her destiny as the legendary warrior Sailor Moon, and must band together with the other sailor soldiers to defend the Earth and galaxy. But really, that only scratches the surface of the story. It's about a normal teenage girl having to face her fears and grow up into a strong, confident person. It's about a frightened girl being put in charge of saving the entire galaxy when she can barely save her GPA. It's about an irresponsible person being elevated to a position that she doesn't feel belongs to her and is only given to her because of things that happened a lifetime ago that was beyond her control. It's about a girl who dreams of marrying the perfect guy, having to risk her life to save everyone she cares about, while simultaneously bringing out the best in her friends who have to sacrifice the same things she does every day. It's about love and loss, despair and hope, weakness and strength, trust and betrayal, but more than anything, it's about growing up and sacrifice. Sailor Moon isn't just a group of cute girls doing cute things in cute little outfits. No. They're called Sailor Senshi for a reason. These girls have to kill or be killed. Yet, have enough compassion to try and redeem their enemies and see the best in the most evil beings in the universe. And sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but that doesn't stop them from trying. And to me, that shows strength. Real strength. Not the power fantasy bullcrap that's being puked onto screen. Strength to get back up after you've been knocked down so many times you hardly know what up and down is anymore. That's what this show is about, which is why a story centered around girly girls and pretty little outfits using cute little attacks on girly villains can speak to everyone on a fundamental level. Because it's a great overarching story first and a female-centered show second. Each season is comprised of mini-arcs which all build up the big season arc and the greatest strength of Sailor Moon. The absolute best thing about it is the setup and payoff of the season finales. I swear to you, each and every season finale of the series is dramatic, intense, heart-wrenching, inspiring, hype, and incredible. You will never, and I mean never, forget the season finales of this show, because every single one is satisfying. Even if the season itself wasn't that great, like Super S compared to all the other seasons is kind of weak in my opinion, but even that season finale was so jaw-droppingly spectacular, I will skip to the last few episodes to enjoy the ending of that season. I don't know how they do it, but the people that worked on the show made sure that the season finales were the most satisfying episodes ever created. I mean, wow. I can't spoil anything, but literally everything is paid off in those season finales. Character arcs, thematic questions, the plot, the defeat of the villains, the spectacle, the music, the themes, the animation, everything is phenomenal. That isn't to say the beginning and middle of the seasons aren't great too, they really are. Otherwise, how would I have gotten to the season finales if I couldn't stomach the beginning and middle of the seasons? But truly, the season finales are just perfection. They really are. But there are some episodes that are in the middle or beginning that will just resonate with you. Like pretty much any episode focusing on Ami's family or Minako's past or Usagi's noticeable maturity throughout the series. These moments are so impactful because the characters are so wonderfully written. When things get serious, you really feel the severity of the situation. And there are some twists that you quite honestly don't see coming, despite a lot of things you do see coming and wish the characters would just ponder on for 2 seconds and understand, but that's for a different section of this video. All I'm saying is, if you come across an episode that doesn't do it for you, trust me, it's just a minor bump in the road toward phenomenal setup and payoff for glorious characters that you will probably have fallen in love with already. I'm not gonna lie, there's some moments where the animation is less than stellar. It's a 90s anime that wasn't created by the Cowboy Bebop staff, what do you expect? But these instances don't happen very often, and they certainly happen less and less as the series goes on, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. In fact, I would say that the animation is pretty good in some places, if not drop-dead gorgeous in others. Beyond the actual animation though, what I've noticed as I've analyzed the show for future videos is the shot composition or scene framing. I am genuinely impressed with whoever the animation directors were for this series because there is so much hidden in the shot composition. There's symbolism everywhere that just adds to the experience of the show. But even the simple placement of the camera and the elements in the background are so cleverly implemented at times, I was shocked by how effective they were with the framing. It's really great, and it's one of the major reasons why I don't like Crystal, because it just isn't smart about anything it does with the camera. Everything is generic and bland and flatter than a pancake. The original 90s anime also has the most excellent voice actors of any show from that time, arguably. I sincerely enjoy all of the performances. I believe every emotion and every moment they're on screen, especially Usagi's voice actress and Rei's voice actress. They can go from childish bickering to gut-wrenching sorrow in the same episode, and it's seamless, like they were real people living the story. Of the villains, I'd have to say Zoisite and Helenia stand out to me, because their voice actors feel so connected to their characters that any other adaptation just won't be able to measure up. I'm sorry, you just can't. Zoisite's jealous, effeminate dishonor is brilliantly portrayed, and Helenia never once feels less than a proud, regal tyrant driven insane and bitter with loneliness. Another technical aspect that I must point out is the use of color. Now, there's nothing revolutionary about the way the creators of the show use color. It's more of an interesting observation in comparison to modern shoujo anime and the Crystal remake. There's a great use of atmosphere to the colors sometimes, and more than anything, there's contrast, which I cannot stand about other anime in this genre and other genres, to be honest. It's the distinct lack of contrast. Who in the hell decided that anime has to look so bright and washed out all the time? I mean, it seems like nothing in these shots are in a real location, like everything is happening in front of 500 stage lights. There's no shadows and a whole lot of highlights, and my eyes are just bleeding now. But this show embraces the entire color spectrum, not just the pastel parts. Even the backgrounds are filled with bold colors and shading that makes the brighter colors stand out. Pacing is something that I'll cover in a minute, but it is a bit subjective when it comes to adapting it from the manga and the amount of filler that actually benefits the story and the amount of filler that doesn't. But I think, personally, the pacing's good. Not the best, it could use some work, but overall I think it's good. I think there's ample amount of time dedicated to character development and world building, which is always good, and the build up for the excellent payoff is helped by all the time designated to the setup. So, I think it's good, but I'll get into it later. The openings are iconic and stunning, featuring some of the best animation the series has to offer as the series goes on, and the symbolism and themes for each one are stylish, impactful, and just gorgeous. Speaking of openings, the music is so dang good I listen to them on a daily basis almost. The tracks are just great to listen to. They're so fun and stylish and distinctive, which is another reason why I don't like Crystal or other modern shoujo anime. The tracks for those are just boring orchestrations that don't sound any different from each other. But this show has amazing jazz, upbeat violins, heartfelt pianos, bombastic horns, and just an assortment of wonderful genres that make each scene's tone clear and saturated. Just listen to some of these. They're amazing. Aside from all the cool stuff that I've praised this show for, it has got to be one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. And I know that comedy is very subjective, but I actually have an ironclad rule about comedy. So listen up, all you aspiring joke writers, because this works every time, no matter the joke. If you have a joke that you think is funny, tell it 3 times a day, every day, after you come up with it. However long it takes for the joke to stop being funny, that's how good the joke is. So if a joke remains just as funny on the 10th day as it was on the first day, it's a pretty freaking good joke. If a joke stops being funny on the 3rd day, it's not a good joke. It's a tried and true method to producing the funniest jokes you possibly can. Use it, give me credit. So when I say I can watch the same episode for 2 weeks straight and laugh at nearly every joke the same way I laughed at them when I first watched the episode, that's some phenomenal jokes. And most of it falls on visual comedy, which is always better than just a verbal joke. And I don't really know how to explain this better, so I'll just show a few of my favorite ones.
すごいみなこもやりたいやりたいできるよ私よりひどいかもいいのよ楽しければ指切った指が落ちてる救急車呼んで救急車ねみなこちゃん気をしっかり持ってねどうしたのあみちゃん救急車救急車くっつけなくっちゃなんだこれ人参の尻尾だよ血出てる少しなんだごめんねまったく慌てもんなんだから自分も騒いでたくせにでははっよっはっとよっはっと素早い動き実力うさぎちゃんやる気ある何すんだよ返せよもうダメ壊れるったく
うさぎそんなに慌ててさては好きなやつにでももらったのか
まあそんなとこかな
なにうさぎパパに内緒で誰かと付き合ってるんじゃないのか
違うのそんなんじゃない前見て前
なんだ違うのかそうだよなそんなわけないよな
よし僕もなるちゃんのために
やめてよ海野
お前はセーラームーン
どひえビラコちゃん
しかし何か違うような
何よ人の完璧な変装に文句が本物よ私たちが交渉するわそれではこの娘は何者で知った知らないわ私のファンかなんかじゃないだいたいそんなドジで泣き虫がセーラー戦士なわけないじゃないそう
ではこれは偽物
私のようにヴィーナスちゃんってば言いたいこと言ってくれちゃって
セーラームーンさえ倒せばあとは雑魚の役立たずどうとでも料理できるわさあこれで僕の勝ちですなかなかしぶといわねへいえいえいえいえいこれでもかさっさと当たんなさいよあんたが下手なだけでしょ私の作ったクッキーの美しさはあんたの作ったブサイクなやつとは違ったもんねうるさいわね私のクッキーは味で勝負なんだから一口食べれば勇気100倍パワー100倍になるスペシャルクッキーなのよ変だ味だって私の作った方が よりより。
お待ちなさい。
今度は誰だ。
やっぱり私がいないとダメね。もっとしっかりしなさいよ。その声は愛と正義のセーラー服美少女戦士見習いセーラーちびむー。未来の月に変わってお仕置きよ。でーちびうさ。
よかろう。貴様から先に片付けてやる。
ピンクシュガー。アタック。あれ、おかしいな。
で、
いたったった。
どうしたのかな。
ピンクシュガーハートアタック。
そうね。たまには息抜きもいいかもね。
やったーい。
それにしてもレイちゃんどうしたのかな。今日は氷川神社での勉強会中止にしてくれだなんて。何かあったのかしら。
レイちゃん。
よね。
ひなさん。遅くなってすいません。いいのよ。私もさっき来たところだから。
女の人に。
誰よ、デートに決まってるなんて言ったのは。
見た目だけじゃわかんないわよ。はるかさんの例だってあるし。じゃあはるかさんの逆で男の人が女装してるってこと？
そんな風には見えないけど。
こっからじゃ何を話してんのかさっぱりわかんないな。
どうでしょうか。そうね。お願いします。どうしても遠野さんに協力していただかないと。
お待たせしました。プレートのお客様は。
はい。
お客様。
気のせいだったのかしら。
お客様。
ひなさん。
If any of that made you laugh, you'll love the comedy in this show. Alright, you guys know me. I'm not the kind of guy to hold back a harsh truth when it comes to something I love. I have to be honest about everything. So, you guys have to know that this show isn't flawless. There are things that could keep you from wanting to partake in this show. Some are valid reasons and some really aren't, but people keep using them to bash the show and poison other people's minds. So let's just go through the big ones with an honest eye. It's repetitive. We covered this one already, but the repetitiveness of the show is not a huge deal. Sure, it can be noticeable at first, but really, when you get to know the characters and the plot really starts progressing and the really funny jokes start flying, you will not mind the repetition at all. Trust me. Tuxedo Mask is useless. I'm gonna have to say no. I get it, the meme is funny, and at times it can seem like he's not doing anything because he isn't making the bad guys explode as much as the Sailor Senshi. But Tuxedo Mask is not useless at all. He's there for moral support and encouragement as much as he's there to kick butt. He's a helping hand for the team, not a heavy hitter. And despite him not being the one to defeat the bad guys on his own, he still helps the Senshi by keeping them focused, helping them find the weak spot of their opponent, and saving them when they get caught by the villains, which happens a lot. And another common complaint that I hear about Tuxedo Mask is the fact that he's always saving Sailor Moon. Let's get this straight. He and Sailor Moon save each other in equal measures. One of them is always jumping in front of the other when danger is near. They're in love. That's what couples do when they're in love. They come to each other's rescue. It's a give and take, not a damsel in distress or a gentleman in distress. They're partners, and they help each other on the battlefield. How is that a reason to not watch the show? That's a reason to watch the show, I think. Plus, they complain about how his roses shouldn't hurt people. Do they not get that the roses are magic? You know, like every other attack in the show is magic? Like, they don't complain about the absurd villains of the week's weird gimmicks doing damage to anyone. But one of the magical characters throws a magical rose and they can't deal with it? What? Why do you think he's always got an infinite amount of roses on his person? They aren't real roses because where would he be holding them? Wouldn't some of them be dying if they were regular roses? Wouldn't he smell like dying roses all the time? The stems are strong enough to pierce stone no problem. Why can't they understand that the roses aren't regular roses from that fact alone? I really don't understand the problem people have with Tuxedo Mask. It's beyond me. The main character is a dumb crybaby. Yeah, that's the point of the show. Changing a dumb crybaby into a warrior princess. It's about growing up, so of course, she has to start off as an immature, simple-minded teenage girl. Look at all the other great anime characters that don't start off as the ultimate mature characters they eventually become. Chihiro, Shinji, Gohan, Bakugo, and do I really need to list more characters that start off as insufferable and become amazing through character development? Have these people never heard of character development, or were they just pulling any reason to not like this show out of the hat? Come on now. Plus, Usagi is funny, and her flaws have consequences, and she does end up overcoming most of them, especially the crybaby aspect. And who in the heck would expect a normal, immature, simple-minded teenage girl to become the ultimate symbol of an ideal heroine at the snap of your fingers? Put yourselves in Usagi's shoes and be honest with yourselves. If you had to suddenly be the defender of the universe and fight against enemies that you don't know how to defeat, protect an all-powerful crystal that you can't find, while also keeping your grades up, finding soldiers to fight alongside you, keep all of this secret from your friends and family, and be constantly attacked and interrupted by monsters of the week that are getting stronger and stronger every time. How would you realistically handle that situation? I would be a crybaby who wanted to quit every half an hour too. What about you guys? Would you really be able to keep it together with all of this going on? Nah, I didn't think so. If you guys are into charming and hilarious characters going through character development and overcoming their flaws, this excuse shouldn't deter you one bit from enjoying this show. The transformation sequences are long and the villains don't attack in the middle of the transformations. I don't know why. Alright, this one I understand. Outside looking in, this is a very valid reason to drop the show. However, there is a very, very simple answer for this excuse. The transformation sequences are slowed down for the audience. In real time, the transformation sequences happen within a second or two. There are times when the show doesn't have a transformation sequence at all, and it only happens in a second. Remember the show Danny Phantom? When Danny is going ghost, Sometimes the creators of the show have a sequence where we take time to absorb the coolness of the transformation. Then there are other times where it just happens in the blink of an eye and on with the show. But does anyone complain about these being too long and someone attacking him while he's transforming? No, because it's clearly an exaggeration on the show's part to emphasize the coolness of the transformation. That's all the transformation sequences are. They aren't literally 2.5 minutes long. They're instantaneous. Plus, they look awesome. They're the best, most iconic transformation sequences in all of anime. And if you don't like them, I hear you, but I'm sorry we can't be friends because I love them. They're really elegant and cool and just awesome. Shows are still trying to measure up to these transformation sequences, and still they are falling short. The characters can't figure out each other's identities, even though it's so obvious. Why don't they understand? I have a rebuttal for this one. It's a valid gripe, I get it. I totally do. But might I just be an apologist for a minute? That's not the point of this show. The point of the show isn't, ooh, I have to wear a mask and change my hair and do a fake voice so no one will know who I am. Ooh, it's so hard to be a superhero and I have a normal life. Ooh. No. The show isn't about the whole superhero double identity thing, believe it or not. It's about all that other stuff that I was talking about earlier. So if this really does bother you enough to keep you from seeing the show, here's the explanation that I have. Sailor Moon is all about magic and junk, right? So let's say, because magic, when anyone transforms into a different identity, because magic, there's a spell that keeps people from figuring out their other identity, because magic. The only way someone can discover the identity of another is witnessing the transformation sequence in person, which breaks the spell or whatever. Sounds good? That kind of makes sense, right? Okay, that's how you guys should approach this part of the show. It's magic. It's a magic spell that keeps people from putting two and two together. It's magic. There is so much fan service. I don't like fan service. Fan service makes me uncomfortable. Again, another valid point. But let it be known, there's not an overt amount of fan service because, as I've said before, that's not the point of the show. The manga was created for a female audience, so there's no real reason to have fan service, let alone a lot of it. So yes, there are a couple moments here and there of fan service, but seriously, it's not a big deal at all. It's not distracting in the slightest, I promise you. The age gap between the romances are so inappropriate. Oh my god.
or anything, but Asian people.
So yeah, I wouldn't let that deter me from watching the show, simply because there are so many other age-inappropriate relationships in other media, and no one has a real problem with those, like Buffy and Angel from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Thor and Jane Foster from Marvel Comics, Milo and Kida from Atlantis, Mabel and 90% of her romantic interests from Gravity Falls, Monica and Richard from Friends, Green Arrow and Black Canary from DC Comics, and that's just to name a few. I don't understand how all of these are just fine to pretty much everybody, but Usagi and Mamoru's relationship is going too far. But if this is a sticking point for you, I'm asking you to please just tough it out, because this show is worth it. It really is.
Okay, Saj, you can defend all of those other points, and you've convinced me of some things, but there's no way you can defend all of the filler, because there's just so much. It's all filler. It's bad. Filler's bad. You can't defend filler. So the main thing that anime fans don't understand is the purpose of filler. I must admit that this is usually the correct assumption. Filler is 99% of the time crappy nonsense that is only present to buy time for the manga to have a good head start on the anime. Just look at Naruto filler, One Piece filler, except for that one filler arc right after Skypiea, Dragon Ball filler. It's all awful, basically unwatchable garbage. But did anyone ever consider to ask why? Why is filler awful? Why is it awful, really? Is it simply because it's not canon, which for whatever reason translates into it isn't good? Just because something is different from the source material doesn't mean it isn't good or it doesn't matter. Take Yu Yu Hakusho, for example. The Dark Tournament arc has numerous battles that have a wide and colorful variety of characters and powers and fighting styles. There is so much to love about this arc, it's no question why it's the most popular arc of the series. In the manga, however, only a few panels are given to some of the fights. There isn't much detail and pages used to describe a full and engaging fight. Unlike tournament arcs in other manga, like Dragon Ball for example, there isn't a huge emphasis on every single fight and every single attack in that fight. In short, some battles' details are fluffed over in lieu of just rushing to the conclusion of the fight, or the major development in the plot, or whatever. Now, no one was complaining, mind you. There was just a distinctive lack of attention to certain fights. But when you watch those same fights in the anime, you'll see something entirely different. You'll see so much detail, so much added spectacle, so much movement and personality and emotion in the battles that you could hardly recognize the source it came from. And you know what? That's technically filler. Could anyone attempt to protest the awesomeness of this scene because it's not canon? My point is this. Filler is not inherently bad. It has a tendency to be bad, sure, but filler itself is not 100% bad all of the time, no matter what. Just because something isn't canon in the most strict and literal sense doesn't mean it is bad. See where I'm going with this? Crystal has taken the filler out, which sounds great, but Sailor Moon's manga is paced like a crazy bullet train. Has anyone actually read the manga? No? I don't really blame you. There is no time for anyone to develop as characters. There's no time to feel the strong emotion of the hardest hitting parts of the story. There's no time to really be invested in anything the characters are invested in. Literally, chapter after chapter, so many things happen plot-wise, and we don't have time to digest what just happened, because the characters also don't have time to digest what just happened. They are constantly moving forward at a breakneck speed, and a lot of things fall by the wayside with this style of writing. Which is why, when the original anime was created, they put in tons of filler. Not because the manga needed to get a leg up on the anime, although it did at times, of course, but because the pacing was piss poor and there was no room for development, investment, personalities, or anything a good story has. Filler was vital to making the show work, and that is not something I say lightly. The reason filler doesn't work in most shows is not only because it's written bad and the things that happen in the story arc don't matter moving forward, but because the story doesn't need it. One Piece filler is unnecessary because Oda has done so much world building and character development and nuanced storytelling, and his pace is just fine. So there's nothing anybody really needs to add, even though the filler arc after Skypiea is great. We didn't really need it. It's the same for Yu Yu Hakusho's fight filler too. The story was being told beautifully. We didn't need all of the filler in the fights, even though it was phenomenal to see. Dragon Ball didn't need filler, so the movies and Garlic Jr. and fucking Icarus didn't need to be there. That didn't stop people from liking all of that, but the story was being told just fine already, and if it wasn't there, no one would really complain. Sailor Moon, however, needed filler in order to tell a better story. It needed it. And the original has a lot of filler that makes the manga's story a whole lot better. We have time with Usagi and Luna and the antagonists. We get time to see their world and their supporting characters and their personalities. We get ample time to really get attached to the protagonist, and even the antagonists get depth and nuance put into them. The character arcs are dynamic and handled beautifully, and there is so much more emotion and tension and genuine struggles and earned triumphs. And guess what? That's all filler. Everything that every original anime fan enjoys about the show is filler. Filler enhanced the source material to a level that made it legendary and iconic rather than just another mediocre magical girl anime. So, yeah, I'm defending the filler, because this is one of the very, very rare cases where the original story desperately needed it. So, yeah.
If you've made it this far, you're either convinced or you're looking for one more push to jump onto this show. Well, I hope this is that last push that you need. If you've watched all of this and you're thinking to yourself, oh, well, SAJ-Man, you're just an otaku, you're just an anime freak, you're just a weeaboo, you're just a pervert, you're whatever. That's not who I am at all. I'm not an anime fan. I'm not a magical girl otaku. I'm not a weeaboo nut for Japanimation. I'm none of that. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy that likes really, really good shows. And this is a really, really good show. Sailor Moon is a show that sticks with you, no matter how you feel about it. At the end of the day, you will walk away from this show with something sticking in your mind, because it's that influential. This show is not a cultural icon for no reason. That doesn't just happen on accident. So much passion and style and care went into this show that just isn't present in any other interpretation of this series. There's something beautiful about these characters, this storytelling, and every other aspect of this show. I'm not saying it's flawless. How many things in this world are? But its positives far outweigh its negatives. And if you give this show a chance, I guarantee that you'll find at least one thing to love about it. And I don't recommend things lightly, especially in videos this long and detailed. So, I promise you, each and every one of you that has stayed for this long, this is a good show. And I and millions, literally millions of other people love it. And in the future, I'm gonna make a lot more content to show you and the world as a whole, I guess, the many reasons why you should watch Sailor Moon. Thanks for watching. That one was a different one than I was used to doing. I'm not used to doing videos about things other than Sonic, but there you have it. I said I'd do it and I did it. And I am planning more, so hopefully you will enjoy those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.
And if you like what you see